My name is Ben Jenkins. I'm joined by the absolutely wonderful CTO of ThreatLocker, Michael. Michael, do say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
First things first, we are not related. We should probably stress that to start off with. We just ironically have the same last names.
And we're both from England.
And we're both from England. So yes, there is always that, but no one ever believes us. Hopefully now some people might. Now, again, thank you guys for joining us today. Obviously, today's session is going to be on ThreatLocker's new solution, our new product, the network access control product. Now, what we're going to do today is we will have a fair amount of time for Q&A, as we do expect there is going to be a good amount of questions. So if you have got any questions while we're running through any of the demonstrations that we're going to be showing, please do feel free to throw them into the Q&A function. We will be checking that, and if it works quite nicely with our flow, we will go ahead and answer it there and then. Failing that, we'll save them for the end. We have, I believe, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have 3 demonstrations we're going to show today.
We do indeed, 3 demonstrations of a couple of various scenarios, just to kind of show different possible uses of the network access control.
Awesome. So I guess without further ado, let's jump into kind of what the what network access control actually is, why we have created this solution, and why it's going to be helpful for IT professionals such as yourselves. So the ThreatLocker Network Access Control, or NAC, as it's also known, and you'll hear us call it internally that, it's essentially our new solution to realistically change the way that IT professionals you're controlling your network access between your clients and your servers. Now, the reason we've done this is because realistically, the local network is no more. We have users who are working from home, remote offices, hotels, and realistically, a multitude of different locations across the globe. And because of this, our local network has now become, well, the internet. And who is it that we're sharing this internet with? Who are we sharing this network with? Obviously, nation states like China, Russia, North Korea. And we need controls in place, not only to protect our machines, but protecting our users and obviously our data as well. And this is realistically where NAC can come in to help us. So the network access control offering, it essentially allows MSPs to dynamically protect connections to IP addresses that have been pre-authenticated as safe and secure. It essentially provides safe remote management, even as MSPs log on to customer accounts from outside of their offices. And by dynamically allowing access to client systems rather than by just static IP addresses, for example, it really means that MSPs no longer have to go ahead and reroute traffic through VPN-like central points of failure, etc. Now, this allows MSPs to lock down network traffic unless it is truly needed. And what we're doing is taking away that surface area attack. If any of you have ever been on any of my webinars or my demos, you'll recognize that term that I use quite frequently. It's minimizing the attack vector, or the attack surface that threat actors can use. And we do that really, really well here at ThreatLocker with the rest of our solution, our whitelisting, ring fencing, elevation control, and storage control. And this is another piece of the product to be able to add in to do that. Every defender that we realistically talk to, every company out there, they're calling for more detection. They're calling for more threat hunters, more SOCs, security operation centers, and realistically, they're all missing the boat. Sorry, Michael's laughing because I said SOCs. I guarantee he was thinking that I was on about the things you put on your feet. They're obviously all missing the boat. Now, what we're providing here with our network access control is true zero trust. So, Michael, shall we jump into a demo here?
Yeah, let me share out my screen here.
Just quickly, we're going to show, first and foremost, we're going to show an RDP connection. So any of you who are at Zero Trust World, which was 2 weeks ago, I believe, you will recognize this demonstration. It's going to be very similar, but then we have got 2 extra demos that we're going to show on top of this as well.
Okay, so we've chosen RDP as the first one. Now, most people are going to be using RDP gateways, hopefully, or not at all if you can get away with it. But it is something that I do see occasionally being set up, and people opening up RDP ports on their firewalls because they need their engineers to remotely access machines, or maybe their CEO wants to access a machine. Now, when I used to work at an MSP, I used to have a lot of CEOs that like to remote in from home, and they didn't want any complications. So they used to just insist that we opened RDP. Now, when it's one IP address, it's perfectly easy to be able to lock down to a static.
Sorry, guys, just to confirm, can people just throw in the chat very quickly if you can hear us? You should be able to hear us okay. Or sorry, into the Q&A, if we can just get a couple of people there. I've seen we've had a couple of people saying they can't hear us. I just want to be sure. Perfect. Okay, Daniel can hear us. And we have now got a bombardment of people saying they can hear us. Okay, thank you. That's fine. Sorry, I saw a message come through on the Q&A, and I was then very concerned that everyone can't hear us. So Michael, you can carry on.
That's fine. I was just about to say, if you can't hear us, you should check your speakers, but if you can't hear us, you won't hear that instruction. So hopefully they figure that out.
Yes.
Okay, so where was I? Yeah, so RDP, opening up, if it's a static IP, you can at least limit down your firewall. But what happens when that CEO starts bouncing around to various places? And that's where you start trying to get VPNs. And this particular CEO that I dealt with was a pain, didn't want that at all. And this solution kind of offers an answer to that. So to start with, I'm going to try and RDP to my server. Now, it is a local server, but we're going to go for an open, like it's over the internet. We're going to try and connect to that now, and it's going to be locked down. Now, when I do connect onto this server, I'm going to show you that the Windows firewall is actually turned off. I have nothing protecting my network except ThreatLocker's network access control. So there we go. That's now failed. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a policy. I'm going to call this RDP because I'm original. Maybe I'll put access in there. And I'm going to permit. And when it comes to the source location, I don't know the IPs. If I do, great. I can add them in like I would a normal firewall. But if I don't, and this is what network access control is really going to help with, you can use a keyword. And that keyword can be anything you want. Hopefully, it's going to be more original than me. But I'm going to say RDP passcode. I'm going to copy that because I'm going to need that in a few seconds. And I'm going to add that keyword in. And then I'm going to say for the selected port, so RDP 3389.
So Michael, just to confirm here, essentially what we're saying is we're just creating our first policy here that's saying, if you're using this passcode, you're allowed to connect over this port. Is that correct?
Exactly.
And then we go in a minute and specify individual machines, right?
Yeah. I'm just going to apply this to my server. So as I scroll down, that's my server there. And I'm going to save and close that policy. So if we do look, I now have that policy on my server. We'll get to the SMB in a little bit. Now I need an authorization host. So the first thing I need to do is choose the port. Set up the authorization host. So I'm going to my server, port 8810. My keyword, this is why I copied and pasted it. And I just want it for my single computer. Now I can use the workstations or a group. I can choose entire organization, but I just want my one computer to be able to access it. So I'm going to add that in.
And then just to confirm here, this applies to is essentially the machine you'd like to be able to connect to. Host name is going to be the destination machine you wanted to be able to access, right?
Exactly. So that can be an IP address, a local host name, an open thing on the internet, and then you can choose a keyword. Now at the moment we use port 8810. And we use our own authentication handshake with this passcode to be able to authenticate in. Now, as we build this product out, we're going to actually make that port selectable. But for now, just for the beta program, we are going to make that at 8810.
Okay, so come full release, you'll be able to choose a port.
Yes.
I'll hold you to that.
Okay, so I've deployed my policies now. So my expectation as these policies deploy is that ZTW33, which is the computer I'm on, I hope, yes, is going to be able to connect to my nac.threatlocker.com with that passcode. Now, that's all I'm saying from this server. The policy that I have set up is set up on my server side to allow RDP access from that passcode. Okay, so if we now go back to my RDP and do the same thing again.
This is always the dreaded part of a live presentation, but there we go.
We are now connected to my server via RDP. And as promised, I will show you the firewall on this. is fully turned off. I do not recommend this on your own servers, but for the purpose of demonstrations, it does the job.
Perfect. All right, awesome. So what we've just been able to show there, guys, is how easily and how simple, realistically, it is to be able to go ahead and lock down your RDP or RDP access to a server. Do we want to jump into IIS next, or should we show SMB next?
I think we'll save SMB for last.
SMB for last, right? Okay, so let's jump over to our IIS setup.
Okay, so I have a website, or we might have multiple. We might have a business application that we need to make public because the users are working remotely. So what we're going to do is, looking around this, and I can't see it because I'm connected to the server. Let me just minimize that. There's my browser. So I'm going to go to my, no, not ThreatLocker, threatlocker.com, and we're going to see that I do not have a website here. That is because I cannot access it. Same thing, it's on the same server, but we've restricted access. The only thing we've opened up has been RDP so far. So we're going to do something very similar, same policy. Sorry, Zoom is in my way. There we go. So this time we're going to do for the website. Now, obviously, this isn't your normal standard company website. This might be a secure portal to one of your applications or something that you want to restrict access to. So here I'm going to choose my keyword, and I'm going to choose a different keyword. So I can actually restrict, copy and paste that because I know I'll type it wrong. And then again here, we're going to go for the selected ports of 443. I could do 80 if I want, but I just want 443 on mine.
So again, just to confirm, that keyword there is the passcode essentially, right? Just to, I know that we're using two different terms here, I guess when Michael and myself talk, but just to confirm, the keyword is the passcode that you'd be using to be able to essentially say that that can talk to over that individual port. And then obviously these machines can talk if they know that passcode, right?
Exactly. Okay. So
So
obviously I've now got the policy, but it is using a different keyword, which is why I still can't access that portal. I need to have the keyword for the computers as well. It has to be, you can set these policies up so you can allow access to one group using certain keywords and maybe certain computers with another keyword. You can add multiple keywords to the same server to make sure that the policies are how you want them to be. And then we're going to go ahead and deploy that. And what's our expectation now is we've now said that that keyword's allowed, which aligns with that policy we've got on the website. So we should, which was supposed to be a portal, but we've got IIS, which is good enough for me. So insert portal here. I've now got access to my website with the simple use of a keyword and a policy. It doesn't matter where they are. So if your users are accessing this portal from a Starbucks or from a hotel or an airport or tethering to their phone, they can use the keyword to get authenticate to your server.
So we've had a couple of questions come in. Before we jump into the SMB piece, I wanted to try and answer a couple of these if possible. So I mean, I guess, Michael, first things first, why is it that we would go ahead and utilize a solution like this rather than a VPN? Obviously, I mentioned it a little bit in my kind of opening monologue as such that, you know, VPNs are generally a central point of failure, but do you see any other kind of reasons as to why?
So when you do a VPN, a lot of the traffic has to go over that VPN, which does put an extra bit of load on your servers. The other thing is this is the granularity of being able to lock down, saying, yeah, okay, well, I've got a VPN to my server. I can now access the server's RDP. I can access the server's website. I can access the server's SMB shares, SQL, mail functions, whatever else it might be. I can access all of them because I'm on the VPN. This allows you to lock down a lot more granular access. So, and this doesn't require them to be out of the office. This works locally as well. So you could say that only one computer in your local office connected via a direct switch to the server, and only one computer is able to access that server. So you can lock it down. It's not just restricted to where you are. And also, I know some places I've had problems where VPNs don't work as well because certain home routers might block them. So you're bypassing a lot of the issues there doing that.
Perfect. So does the computer connecting to the remote server or workstation need to have ThreatLocker installed upon that?
If it's going to use the keyword section, yes. If you're using an IP address, obviously not.
Awesome. That's great. Nice and easy, that one. So over from there, is the NAC solution an add-on service subscription, or is it included with the privileged access management solution? It is going to be a add-on or part of the subscription. If you're already a partner, please reach out to your sales rep. They're more than happy to help, but it is a add-on into our solution. So yes, definitely keep that in mind. Obviously, we have got a few more questions, but we'll save some of those just for the end as well. I can see our questions are dramatically going up, so do give us some time there while I just go ahead and sort those out. But while I'm doing that, Michael, do you want to go ahead and show SMB for us?
Yes, I do. So again, file shares, I'm going to show in not working first. So if I go to my, nope, there we go. Apparently I've allowed that in. Let me look at my policies. Hey, if a demo didn't go wrong somewhere, I'd have something. Oh yeah, I have my SMB policy. What have I opened that up to? Okay, so I may have some.
Just very quickly to stress, what's the importance of nac.threatlocker? That's essentially the nac.threatlocker.com. That's the name of the machine, right? So
yeah, I've just used it as a name. It can be, you can use an IP address, you can use a host name. I've just put that because it's just a location that I can go to that's easy to remember.
Yeah, sorry guys. All that is the host name for the machine. Sorry, we probably should have stressed that earlier. There's nothing fancy there. It's just the host name of the machine.
Okay, so what we're going to do is, I think I've got some Windows caching from our previous testing. So I'm going to demonstrate this using the IP address, which will actually cover the fact that I'm using NAC and other people want to see that.
Nice.
So I've got my policy here for my SMB ports, and it's going to be coming from my SMB password there. So when I go to my authentication hosts, we're going to add in the same thing again. SMB, caps lock on. And again, we're going to apply that to that machine. So if I do go to, what is the IP address of this? I believe it is easier to ping it and not guess. Yeah. So before I deploy my policies, we just want to see that not working, which as we can see, we give Windows enough time and it'll eventually fail on that. But when we deploy our policies, we'll just open up a new Windows for that. Oh, we've kicked in with the password. There we go. So once I deployed my policies, I'm then able to access that network share. So same principle as the other things. I have to have the password. I've got to have the authentication host. Bit of a hiccup there because I'd already cached the permitting, and Windows likes to remember everything you've done and store it. But you can see there, as soon as I've got my authentication host, I was able to access the over the IP address. It doesn't matter if it's an IP address. It doesn't matter if it's a host name or a public-facing domain. You can use anything you're using to be able to communicate with the server.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that, Michael. I mean, yeah, it wouldn't be a live demo without a slight hiccup. Every live demo normally has one, depending on how well it's hidden. So I guess, guys, what we've been able to show you here is really the power of the ThreatLocker Network Access Control Suite. What we really want to be able to show is not just, oh, this is great at blocking RDP, but this can realistically be used for SMB access. It can be used for blocking access to servers in general, depending on whatever port it is. The scope of this, you are only limited by realistically what you can think of. So let's jump over into some questions here. There's been a fair influx of questions, so let's have a little look through here. The first question that I've got, we'll start from the start piece here. We've obviously covered why you wouldn't want to use a VPN there. Is NAC going to have learning mode, Michael?
It is not. It is at the moment, it's a default by deny, so no policies means blocked. We've always said that our policies work like a firewall. Now they really, really do. You have to have a policy to allow in anything at all. Now, usually that's pretty much how you're going to be because you're used to what your network has. So there's not really much need for a firewall in that, a learning period. And that might, I do not mean to say firewall there. I meant learning period. Still have a firewall. Please have a firewall. But yes, you won't really need the learning period because you already know the policies that you're going to use. You're just hopefully going to be hardening those things. Now, if you're already locking down your firewall so that it can only come from one IP and it never needs anything else, I'm not suggesting that you open it up to the world. I'm suggesting that if you have it open, this is a way of locking it down. If you have a CEO of one of your customers or one of your users that has to work remotely and has to access things, lock it down so that they can, wherever they may be, they can use it.
So, I mean, linking back to what you were talking about just there with firewalls a few times, is this supposed to be in place of a managed firewall? Now, I'm going to go with a no there. Is that fair?
So this is about endpoint security. So we're not talking about the perimeter. Technically, this would replace your endpoint firewall, or at least work in conjunction with it. But as you saw, my Windows Defender firewall was turned off, and ThreatLocker's network access control blocks the access to it. It is endpoint, it is not perimeter. So on your actual perimeter, you should still have your firewall. We're not replacing that. We're just giving you an ability to control the endpoints firewall.
I think the key thing to stress there is, and we probably haven't stressed it enough, I mentioned it in kind of the last sentence that I said at the beginning of this session. We are a true zero trust solution. So unless the policy is in place, it is going to be denied by default. So that's more than likely been the key thing to remember here when it comes to the firewall access. Let's have a look. Can ThreatLocker control the Windows firewall, or do we have to have an O3 permissive, blah, blah, blah? It does not control the Windows firewall by default. So something key to realize there. Let's have a look further down. Can we do the same? No. Can we do the same with Citrix? Can we do the same with Citrix NetScaler? So long as you know the port that each of those solutions are using, there should not be a problem with that in the slightest. Down from there. Sorry, guys.
I did see a question in there. I was trying to find it again. It does work with a fully qualified domain name, as well as anything else. It's just like I said, I was just using a local domain for it.
So another question, actually a really interesting question I've actually been wondering as well. Is the keyword encrypted so that it can't be intercepted when it's being used on a public network?
Yeah, so we do recommend, it does go over port 8810. And what we do is we do a challenge request. It's a salted thing. Both sides need a salt that they don't have access to that isn't sent across. So it is, you have to have ThreatLocker both sides for it to really work. Having just the password isn't enough to be able to authenticate.
Perfect. Do the computers that the policies are applied to have to actually be secured or locked down?
No.
So this is going to be the same as our elevation control
And storage control.
There. So when you're talking about locked down or secured, that's really only going to be part of our application whitelisting and by extension ring fencing as well there. Obviously, the fully qualified domain name question we have just answered.
You found it.
I've just found that question there. are we telling the NAC server who to accept connections from, or are we telling the endpoint that it can connect?
We are telling the server that is receiving, so it is only accepting from certain IP addresses. Now, those IP addresses can be given to it via the keyword or by the IP in the policy.
Perfect. Perfect. So are we planning, obviously, in this evolving into any kind of traditional NAC where it'll integrate with switches and block unknown devices from plugging into a switch? I mean, I guess at this time, not right now, is probably fair, but
this is the endpoint side of things.
Yeah.
So we're still sticking in our lane. We are all about endpoint security. Everything we do and everything we build is about endpoint security, maybe with the exception of elevation, because elevating a user is not really secure, it's convenience, but it's still around the endpoint. So yes, it's endpoint security. We are just focused on the endpoint for now.
Perfect. So do those authorization host names need to be fully qualified domain names with public DNS resolving to correct IPs, or is ThreatLocker dynamically intercepting requests to those host names and redirecting to the known agent?
So if you're talking about going remotely, yes, you're going to need something. It can be an IP address. It doesn't have to be an actual DNS entry. You can use an IP, but it would need to be, if you're accessing it remotely, you'd need one for the public IP for that server.
First of all, thank you, Michael. So there we go. You've got a good shout out there, Michael. What if there were a few machines that I cannot install ThreatLocker on? Can they still VPN in and then remote desktop, or will ThreatLocker block it with NAC?
So if you're VPNing in still with a couple of machines, obviously they're going to have set IP addresses. So you can approve them via the IP of the VPN that is being given to them.
Perfect. Perfect. Let's get down a little bit. For the SMB example, can you set a policy down to the specific share, or is it only at the host level?
It is for the host level. Obviously, we still have the remote presence to add things for the security on the storage control if you want to use it that side as well.
So that's a very good point. And do you see this as a replacement for remote presence?
It's for sort of a replacement in some aspects, like if you have a particular server you want to lock down, but it's also more of a way of hardening it. So if you can use remote presence, and I covered this in one of my trainings today, and I've covered it before, when using remote presence, obviously it's about whether or not the machine has ThreatLocker, but you've got printers that don't have ThreatLocker, so you have to open up them. So you could use the NAC to actually restrict the server, so it can only come from machines running your ThreatLocker, as well as certain IPs for printers or backup devices and stuff like that. So you can use it as a way of hardening remote presence as well.
Perfect. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So in terms of a costing, how is this going to work? I guess that's probably a question that I'll answer that one.
You can answer that.
I'll answer that one. Michael likes computers. He does not like numbers. So essentially, from a pricing standpoint, it's going to vary depending on obviously what banding you're in, whether you're in the say under or sub 100 endpoints, all the way up to say the 10,000 endpoints, etc. In terms of that, if you're on one of our lowest bandings, it's going to be around about $1 per endpoint per month. However, obviously, if you're in some of our higher bands, that could go all the way down to about 30 cents an endpoint per month. So it very much does depend. The easiest way to describe it, guys, is if you have a question about pricing, please do get in touch with your sales guy. They are going to be more than happy to be able to help. Wonderful. So let's have a little look further down. When remote, do you need to do port forwards for 8810 in this case? So when you're remote then, or on the firewall, you don't need to do anything. So
you will have to open up your perimeter for the port that you're choosing. So in this case, by default and during the beta testing, it's going to be 8810. But yes, you will have to open up that so that can be accessible.
Perfect. I've just seen another question asking if there's going to be learning mode. At this time, we are not looking into a learning mode as such. But again, maybe in the future, if there's enough interest, we could definitely look into it internally.
It's still a very young product, obviously, hasn't even been released to public beta yet, will be very soon. But we will be, obviously, we're going to keep developing it like we keep developing all our products. So it's not something that we're definitively saying this will never happen, just that it might be, it's definitely not coming out for the first one.
Okay, awesome. So we've had someone ask, does this mean that storage control is obviously not good enough?
Excellent question. I mean, when I'm locking my door, having a lock is really useful, but not if I don't have a door. You have to have multiple controls in place to make sure something is secure. Storage control has benefits. It has the ability to lock things down, but as I mentioned before, there are the parts where you can't put ThreatLocker on a backup device. I can't remember what one they said they used in training today, but it was a good example. But printers, things like that you can't install ThreatLocker on. So therefore, you have to open up storage control to allow certain users access. This network access control now says you can bolster that security on storage and say, this printer IP is allowed. So you're just adding a little bit of extra security. It's all about controls, and the more control you have, and I avoid saying layers for a very good reason, but the more controls you have in place, the less likely you are going to have anything happen. Now, storage control is the SMB side of things. Now, yes, you could just use storage control and lock it down, but you will have to open things if you are using network printers. If you don't have network printers or backup devices that can't install ThreatLocker, then the NAC isn't really going to help you bolster this because you're already going to be covered. But for everything else.
Perfect. Now, I'm going to give a massive shout out here to Scott, because Scott has asked one of the best questions that, frankly, we were hoping someone would ask. Scott said, we currently use ConnectWise Automate and ConnectWise Manage. We can access this from anywhere without a VPN. Would this be able to lock down our workstations?
Absolutely. That is one of the scenarios that I would have loved to demonstrate, but very hard to demonstrate.
Yes, we were talking about this last night, actually. We were hoping to be able to demonstrate a solution like this. It's just we didn't have time to go ahead and get a setup like this, but it would 100% be a use case.
Yeah,
for this.
I'm not sure what port they do, but it is network traffic. So you will be able to lock down your on-prem RMM to be able to only access from certain keywords, and you can have those keywords onto your machines in ThreatLocker. In addition to that, if you're accessing the management portal, you can have different keywords. So yes.
So would this work on a DVR, or does it only work on resources running on both ends? Again, as I guess covered earlier, it would work on a DVR if you knew the IP address.
Which most DVRs have a static IP.
So you could hypothetically do it through there. It seems like we're having a mini storm, so I do apologize if you guys can hear the rain. Apart from policy distribution, if your server becomes unavailable, will the endpoint still be able to communicate with the policies that have been applied?
Yes, so as with all our policies, they run locally as well. So if you do lose internet, you don't lose all full policies. You have those policies on the machine. Just obviously changes to those policies won't be applied. Now, it probably goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. The client does need to be able to authenticate to the server. But I suppose if the client couldn't speak to the server, then the lack of authentication would be irrelevant because it wouldn't need to be able, it wouldn't be trying to RDP to a server it can't communicate to.
Exactly, yeah. If the Windows Firewall is enabled, what's going to take precedence? ThreatLocker NAC or Windows Firewall?
Excellent question.
We may have stumped Michael. I want to err on the side of NAC, but
I would say probably both.
Okay, so leave that with us, guys, and we will go ahead and actually test that one.
We are working towards something with the firewall as well to kind of work in between them. But I would imagine if the Windows Firewall says no traffic on 443, then you're blocking 443. So it won't be able to get to it. So it's like having two restrictions in there. Now, I'm not saying you should get rid of it. You should still keep your Windows Firewall if you have it. But on your server, if you've opened up 443 and closed it on the NAC, it's not going to be able to get through. So it's going to be both effectively. They are both controlling the network access. Just our NAC is dynamic as opposed to a Windows Firewall, which is static.
So how secure is the keyword to brute force? How is this keyword working in the background?
So the keyword does need to be set on from the ThreatLocker client. We've built our own authentication process between the two through challenge and response. So it's not just the keyword that's used. We use other security that's built into the services to be able to communicate between the client and server. Obviously, I used SMB passcode. You can use whatever you want. You want to randomly generate 150 characters on your passcode, you can. It will accept that, but we also have additional security on the service and the client that adds in that as well. So it's not just the traffic that's being sent.
Perfect. What's the expected overhead CPU and RAM? Now, I'm going to assume again it's pretty minimal compared to our normal agents expected overhead here, because realistically all it's doing is it's going through again a whitelist and saying whether or not it can connect or can't connect. Is that correct?
So you do see a little bit more RAM used on the server itself, but not much.
Are we talking gigabytes? Or are we talking?
We're talking, I think we've seen up to 100 megabytes, depending on the policy set, depending on the amount of connections and stuff like that. So far through our testing, it's been minimal. Obviously, as we roll this out into a public beta, we're going to see more accurate results on that, as well as performances, because our test environments are very clean, very nice, very controlled. When we open up to a public beta, that's when we get to see the messy side of things, and not to call your systems messy, but they're at least active, whereas ours are built for purpose.
They're more realistic.
Yeah, yours are real.
Okay, awesome. I mean, and just jumping off the back of what you said there in terms of being pushed out into a public beta, do we have a date? We won't hold you to it, I guarantee that. But do we have a rough date that we're looking at?
So we are looking for, we were hoping to do it at the end of this. We're just tweaking a few things that we found in the portal. So we are looking for next week, the start of next week.
Beautiful, perfect. That's really, really good. So will the NAC work in tangent with other solutions, for instance, Sophos? Yes, again, we shouldn't have a problem with that. We don't ever like to not work with other solutions, so that should be absolutely fine there. There will not be a problem there. That's an interesting question. Can you still see the ports as open during a vulnerability scan? I would assume yes.
Depends on the scan. If you take your perimeter firewall and lock it down so it can only be accessed from 5 IP addresses, some scans will still show it as open because technically it's there for an authentication. So there is a good chance that it will show as open, but nothing will be able to connect to it. So it depends on the scan. I've seen scans that they try and go a little bit further to see if they can actually authenticate rather than just see if the port is open. If you're just looking to see if the port is there, then it'll be the exact same as if you've locked down your perimeter firewall to only 5 IPs, because that firewall still publishes that port. They just disable it as it comes in. So it very much depends on the actual scan that's being done.
Perfect. Is it going to, or is it essentially default denial on all ports unless it's allowed, or is it restricting access on a specific port to be allowed certain systems?
So it is by default only open currently on 8810.
So it's a default deny for everything.
It's a default deny for everything.
Which obviously follows on very, very similar from the rest of the ThreatLocker solution there.
Now, as we develop this through the beta, we're going to see things that we need to have open for certain purposes and stuff like that. At the moment, we're not seeing anything that's massively important. Nothing that's causing any problems on our systems. So as we're going through that, we're going to it's a heavy storm. Sorry, I'm used to storms in England, not in Orlando. Okay, so yeah, it will be, we may end up with some suggested policies like we do with our application control and with our storage, but at the moment we don't have the data for that. So that public beta is going to give us more data, which is going to give us an idea on what we need.
Perfect. So can your product differentiate between local access for policies and WAN access, i.e. RDP using fully qualified domain names and policy changes based on location?
So you can set the destination. So yes, you could,
yeah,
when you're doing the policies, you could change the destination to be, and like you said, a WAN address and stuff like that.
We just did everything internally today, but obviously it can be WAN. That's totally fine as well. what kind of information doesn't the unified audit capture for NAC? Is there an ability to restrict which admins can also make changes?
So
in terms of the audit, we can see what's being denied.
I'll actually share my screen again and show the audit. At the moment, there is a lot of information. Again, it's a beta product. So we're going to be learning. We need to see what's going on. We need to see what's happening. So as you look at this, let me just filter to action type of network. Now, some of this is going to be my ring fencing, but you're going to see things like this. So you've got the source and destination. At the moment, we have a lot. And we are going to be filtering out some of that as we see more of it. But you're going to see the source, you're going to see the destination. As for making changes, that is going to be permissions around policies and authorization hosts, similar to what you have in the application control.
Perfect. How does work with items such as scanners, printers, IoT, etc., that need to communicate with these servers and desktops? Again, those kind of things you obviously will not be able to install the agent on. We support Windows Server 2008 R2 and above, I believe.
R1?
R1 maybe. There we go.
I know we have Windows 7.
Yeah. So obviously we support Windows pretty much, and obviously we have the Mac agent that is coming out or is out in beta.
It is out. No, it's coming out in beta. We're also looking to add in the NAC into the beta of the Mac as well.
Of the Mac. Okay, awesome. So obviously scanners and printers and IoT do fall outside of that. So long as you know the IP address, you'll be able to lock it down based on IP address for those. And normally those devices do have static IPs there as well. Is the authorization server a separate thing than the server that you're securing access to that I need to set up and then expose to the internet?
So the authorization server is the one that you would be securing, because that's the one that you're telling to open up to certain keywords. So it will be the same. Now, obviously you can create policies for a whole servers group, but you'd need an authorization host to go to each of the servers to say, hey, I need this.
Do I need port 8810 open on the router to the WAN interface?
If you are accessing this from remote, yes.
There we go. Okay. How does this perform if the endpoint and computer or the ThreatLocker agent can't actually check in? Obviously, with application whitelisting, all the policies are cached. Is it the same there as well?
Same again. If it's not online, it won't get any changes, but it will have the existing things. Obviously, if the laptop isn't online, it won't be communicating to your server back in your office if it's not locally with it. But if it's not online, it will keep whatever policies it has.
What happens in the event that the service crashes on the destination machine?
The ThreatLocker service?
Yeah.
It recovers itself.
Use the ThreatLocker Health service?
Yeah, well, ThreatLocker itself recovers itself.
Perfect.
But yes, the same as what would happen with whitelisting. You wouldn't notice.
That's good then. Obviously, yes, guys, for those of you who have asked, there is going to be a recording released of this as well. Any more tech details available for further reading? Yes, we will have some technical writing that we'll be releasing hopefully over the next few days. Don't hold me to that. We need to work with our marketing team and just finalize what we've got. But yes, there will be some more content being released regarding this solution. What else have we got here? Answered the Windows Firewall questions there. Are these events shown in the unified audit log? Of course, yep, you can see that in the screen here today, which is great.
Now, how it's shown will probably differ. We're still debating how it should look and what it should do, how it should really be shown for you. So we're going to, there's going to be changes made to it, but for now, we're just giving the data and then we'll figure out what needs to be filtered, changed, altered.
Can IPs be allowed with a CEDAR? For example, your VPN subnet answer.
Yes, they can.
Very nice. That is very cool.
So the IPv4 and IPv6 both support slash notation.
Right. On our hardware firewall on the outside, We just have to open up 8810 for display allowed in, ETA on specific different ports. Yep, so as was answered earlier, you just need to go ahead and open that.
Yeah. During the public beta, we definitely won't be doing the different ports. It makes it a lot easier to diagnose issues if you know the port that it's working on. So as we're testing and going through betas, we're going to be using the static port.
Interesting one here. What about mobile devices connecting to servers, i.e. tablets, iPads, iPhones connecting to RDS deployments? Again, I guess that's going to come down to IP restriction. It'll have to be a static IP.
Yeah.
If you know the IP address of those machines, obviously, again, because we don't have an agent for those OSs, that's something that we aren't necessarily able to support right now. But again, something that we will look into in the future.
Yeah, we will. Hasn't happened yet, but we will be having a discussion with our mobile development team to see whether or not this is something we can put into our mobile app. But that discussion hasn't been had yet, so I can't say if it's even possible.
Is it all or nothing on the pricing brands, or can we buy it for one organization? The best answer to that, guys, is reach out to your sales rep. They will be able to help you there.
If you're already an existing partner, obviously you want to reach out to your account manager.
Yes.
But yeah, either of them will be able to help you.
Again, yes, the recording will be available for review. Expand again on port 8810. Is this a port forward inbound?
So yeah, it's the port that we have chosen because it's an unused port that we can connect onto to do the authorization. So our authorization handshake happens over port 8810.
Perfect. What's the major difference in NAC and a software firewall? I mean, I would guess the first major difference is obviously our default deny there. We're denying anything from access.
To be fair, your software firewall is probably similar on that aspect, but the biggest one will be the dynamically updating. Now, depending on whether or not you're talking about your software firewall for your perimeter or software firewall for your endpoint, obviously we're endpoint, but our ability to dynamically update depending on where someone is. So if you are accessing your secure portal or your RDP or RDP gateway, and your engineers are moving between Starbucks, hotel, airport, all around the world, those IPs are changing without you having to. So this solves some of the problems, and I covered this at Zero Trust World, where you get a phone call from someone going, I need you to open this IP up, and you open it up, and then they go, I need you to open this. What about the last one? I've left that. I left it yesterday. It's solving that. You're taking away that aspect of having to manually open and close ports and IP addresses, on your perimeter to make yourself more secure.
Can I put a keyword on my MSP ThreatLocker machine and a policy on my child tenant? I'm assuming this is referencing global
policies will be, well, the authorization host, yes, actually, right now, you can create an authorization host to speak to one of your client machines and have the policy at the client. So yes.
And global policies?
Global policies are something we're looking at. They're not there at the moment.
Perfect, okay, so that's great. Will there be a ThreatLocker agent for Mac, Linux, iOS, Android? So we can do a keyword based off of those devices as well. We have just released in beta our Mac agent, and we will have NAC support for that.
We're going to build in NAC into Mac.
NAC into Mac, nice.
Linux is something we are actually looking at developing. So it is coming onto our roadmap. iOS, we have an app. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm going to speak to the mobile development team to see whether or not it is possible. Same with Android. We are working on the Android version of our mobile app anyway as well. So that being said, Mac will be a yes. We're working towards that now. Linux will be a yes once we have a Linux agent. iOS and Android will be dependent on capabilities of iOS and Android. But assuming it's possible, yes, which would then cover your iOSs and tablets.
Perfect. Is this going to be part of the current agent, or is there a separate agent? It's going to be part of the current agent. There will be an update pushed out, I would assume.
So it is going to be version 7.0.
Nice. Okay, there we go. Just to be clear, guys, if you want to use the passcode for this solution, you need to have ThreatLocker installed on both ends, both the client and the host. If you are happy to lock it down based on IP, if you know the IP of the machine, then you only need ThreatLocker on the host,
On
or
the server,
the destination machine.
And to just expand on that a little bit more, you can use a combination of both. So you can have some IPs, some subnets, some IPv6s, and some keywords. You can use a multitude in the same policy. You're not limited to just one.
Kevin has said, so it's like having a lock on your lock on the doorknob and a deadbolt.
Absolutely.
Yes, that is a great way to be able to describe that there.
Really, I mean, the network access control, as Ben said at the start, it's come from a world that got rid of a perimeter. Now, that came from a pandemic, but maybe we would have moved towards that anyway. But more and more people work remote now. More and more people travel now. And as the world gets busier, your security has to start taking hits. This is a way of going, okay, so I'm taking a hit on opening my perimeter, but I'm going to bolster the security on the endpoint itself. And the endpoint security is becoming the key because perimeters aren't everywhere.
Exactly. So after a passcode is changed, how quickly would the connection switch over to refused?
So it is based on, I think it's 5 minutes.
Perfect.
No, I think if you deploy policies with the new passwords, it might be on next check-in.
Okay. Let's have a look down. How can we protect a printer? Obviously, we covered that. Just for the gentleman who did ask how we protect a printer, you would need to know the IP address of the printer, and then you can add that in instead of the passcode. So that's something that we can.
Yeah, so if you've got your printer, your multifunction printer scanning to a network share, obviously, if you're using remote presence, you're going to build in the policies to allow that user to come in, the scanner user, but you're going to have the NAC then with the IP address of the multifunction printer as well, just so that it can still come in on SMB.
And do we need to know subnet with that, or is it just IP?
It can be single IP or subnet. So you can just put an IP address in, or you can put the full subnet. Obviously, putting the full subnet kind of defeats the purpose, but you can put sort of just the single IP as well.
Okay. Does the authorization challenge request process have any issues traversing over a VPN? Will ports or services need to be opened on the VPN firewall in order for this to work?
So you'll need the port 8810 open. As for problems in our lovely controlled environments, we haven't seen any. As you test it in beta, I am hoping you'll find any if there are any, but none that we're aware of. We will be publishing a document of known issues, so that you know before you start using it what the possible issues are. And as people raise issues, we will update that document. So it's going to be a knowledge-based article, and you're going to be able to view that and say, oh, okay, I know the issues, and you'll be able to see what's going on. It's going to be actively updated as you report something. So if you report an issue, the first thing it will be is it will be published in that knowledge base to say potential issue. And then as we verify it, confirmed issue, as we fix it, resolved issue. So you're going to get to see all of that in the knowledge base article. So when you are looking at using the NAC and you roll up to version 7.0, just keep your eye on that sort of knowledge base article so you know what's going on.
Ed's asked a very interesting question. I guess it's probably linked to the amount of cyber attacks that we've seen quite recently. Is there a way that we can lock down NAC based on a country? So I guess lock out certain.
So yeah, we haven't got geolocation in it at the moment. Not something that I can say if we're going to have or not have, but bear in mind it's default deny. So don't open it to Russia and you're all good. But yeah, it's default deny. So unless you're adding in IPs from them or keywords and putting the machines in those areas, you're not going to have the problem of those IPs being able to get in.
For our performance impact, guys, in case you missed our earlier answer to that, the performance impact is going to be very, very minimal. We're talking about 100 meg or so extra on the server side, but from a client piece, it should be very minimal and you shouldn't really notice that. So what we'll do is we'll answer one more question because we are at the top of the hour now. For the rest of you who have asked questions, we will go ahead and get answers to those sent out as well. So let's go ahead and pick a last question here.
Bear in mind, there's going to be some documentation posted around this. We're going to have the knowledge base articles on known issues, how to configure it, how to set it up. Cyber heroes will be there as well.
What if I need to go ahead and expose 2 servers? Can I set them to use different ports, as I can't port forward the same port twice over LAN?
So as soon as we open up the multiple IP ports, yes, you will be able to use different ports. But at the moment, obviously, it's set to the one.
Perfect. Okay, well, again, guys, for the rest of you who had questions, we will do our best to try and answer them. Apologies, we haven't got around to them all today. We had a lot more questions than we definitely anticipated that we would have. So do bear with us and we will try and answer those there. Now, thank you again for joining us today. Guys, if you are interested in learning a bit more about NAC, do keep an eye out. We will be releasing some content regarding this. Please reach out to either your sales reps, your account managers, so that you can find kind of exact pricing. And obviously, if you are interested in learning any more about the ThreatLocker solution as a whole and how it does integrate in with each other, how each individual component, we can now say our 5 components, please, again, do reach out. You can book demos straight through our website or reach out to one of our sales reps or account managers, and we are more than happy to have one of our expert SEs on a call with you to be able to answer those questions. Without further ado, thank you again from Michael and myself, and hopefully we'll see you on the next webinar.
Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Cheers.